You close your eyes, pull the covers up, check your phone one last time, the door is locked, the windows are secure, the alarm is set, and then, if you're lucky, you drift off into 8 hours of uninterrupted unconsciousness. This is so normal to you that you probably don't think about it. Sleep is just what you do. Close your eyes, wake up later, repeat. But here's what you need to understand. This kind of sleep, deep, continuous, safe, private, is almost entirely new in human history. For 300,000 years, humans slept completely differently. Not just in different places, but in a different way. A way your body still remembers, even though your mind has forgotten. Because every night, as you struggle to fall asleep, as you wake at 3 a.m. for no reason, as you cycle through light and deep sleep in patterns that sometimes feel broken, you're not experiencing insomnia, you're experiencing memory. Your body is still sleeping the way your ancestors had to sleep when there were no walls, no doors, no safety. When sleep itself was the most dangerous thing you did all day. Think about what has to happen for you to sleep well. You need to feel safe, completely safe. Safer enough to become unconscious for hours. Safer enough to lose awareness of your surroundings. Safer enough to be utterly defenseless. This is why sleep problems and anxiety go hand in hand. Your body will not let you sleep if some part of it believes you're in danger. It doesn't matter if your conscious mind knows you're safe. If your ancient alarm systems detect threat, real or imagined, sleep becomes impossible. But here's what's strange. For most of human history, humans were never actually safe at night. Never. The threats were real, present, constant, and yet they had to sleep anyway. So the question becomes, how did humans sleep when sleep was genuinely dangerous? If you're using this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these videos. So maybe subscribe and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always check the comments and it's fascinating. Someone in Sydney at dawn, someone in Chicago at midnight, someone in Amsterdam in the quiet hours before morning. All of us lying in our enclosed, protected spaces, trying to sleep the way our ancestors never could, carrying sleep patterns evolved for a world that doesn't exist anymore. So get comfortable, adjust your pillows, let your body sink into the surface beneath you. And let's walk back through time together, to the long nights before homes existed, before safety was something you could lock behind a door. Let's explore how humans learned to sleep in the dark, surrounded by danger, and how those ancient patterns still shape the way you sleep tonight. Over the next 2 hours, we're going to trace the evolution of human sleep from its origins in the African wilderness to your modern bedroom. We are going to walk through specific nights, specific scenarios, understanding exactly what it was like to try to sleep when sleep was a calculated risk rather than a nightly guarantee. We'll explore why humans sleep in cycles, why they wake multiple times each night, why the hours between 2 and 4 a.m. feel so different from other times. We'll look at how sleep changed as humans gained control of fire, as they formed larger groups, as they eventually built the first shelters that could be called homes. And maybe by understanding where your sleep patterns came from, why they work the way they do, what they were designed to protect you from, maybe you can make peace with the quirks and difficulties of your modern sleep. Not fix them necessarily, but understand them. See them not as failures, but as inheritances. Ancient adaptations still active, still trying to keep you safe, even though the dangers they evolved to protect against vanished thousands of years ago. Picture this. It's 200,000 years ago. The sun is setting over the East African savanna, painting the sky in shades of amber and deep red. The temperature, which has been brutally hot all day, is dropping rapidly. This is the tropics, where the temperature can swing 30 degrees between day and night. You're part of a small band of early humans, perhaps 20 or 30 individuals. You've spent the day foraging, gathering plant foods, tracking game, moving across the landscape in patterns learned over generations. But as the light fades, the group's behavior changes. The scattered individuals who ranged widely during daylight hours now draw closer together. Children who'd been playing at the edges of the group stay within arm's reach of adults. Everyone moves toward a spot that has been silently agreed upon, a slight rise in the land that offers visibility in multiple directions. There's no discussion about this, no explicit planning. It's simply what the group does as sunset approaches, because nightfall means danger, and danger means staying close. The air smells of dust and dry grass, and the distant scent of water from a stream half a kilometre away. You can hear the evening sounds beginning, the insects starting their night chorus. The distant calls of animals you can't quite identify. Some of these sounds are familiar, safe, part of the normal background of night. Others are not. As the last light fades from the sky, someone has managed to maintain the fire. Fire is precious. Fire is safety. Fire is the difference between a night of relative security and a night of pure terror. But fire is also difficult. It requires constant attention, constant feeding, constant vigilance, or if it goes out, starting it again in the darkness is nearly impossible with the tools available to your ancestors. So the fire never goes out. Someone is always responsible for keeping it alive. The group arranges itself around this fire in patterns that aren't random. The strongest, most alert individuals position themselves on the perimeter, facing outward. Women with young children settle closer to the centre, within the brightest circle of firelight. Older individuals, still valuable for their knowledge and experience, but no longer as capable of fighting or fleeing, stay near the fire as well. The arrangement is automatic, evolved through thousands of generations of trial and error. The groups that arranged themselves this way survived. The groups that didn't. Now the question becomes, how do you sleep? Because here's the problem. You're exhausted. You've walked perhaps 15 kilometers today, in the heat, searching for food and water. Your muscles ache. Your body demands rest. Your brain, having been processing threats and opportunities and social dynamics all day, desperately needs the restoration that only sleep provides. You need to sleep. You have to sleep. But you're lying on the ground. Not on soft grass in this season, the dry season, but on dirt and stones and whatever you could gather to cushion the surface. Your ancestors don't have sleeping mats. Not yet. No soft bedding. No pillows. The ground is hard and unforgiving. Your hip pressed against earth and stone will start to hurt within an hour. You'll need to shift positions, which means waking partially, which means your sleep will be fragmented whether you want it to be or not. The temperature is dropping. During the day, you might have wished for coolness. Now, as the night deepens, you'll wish for warmth. The fire helps, but only if you're close enough. Too close and the smoke bothers you, stings your eyes, makes you cough. Too far and the cold seeps in. There's a narrow band of optimal distance from the fire, and everyone is trying to occupy it. You can hear everything, every sound in the darkness beyond the firelight. The movement of grass in the wind, or is that something walking? The crack of a branch, or is that something climbing down from a tree? The distant cough, or is that a leopard signalling its presence? Your hearing, sharp during the day, becomes almost painfully acute at night. Your brain cannot help but process every sound, categorizing it. Safe? Possibly dangerous, definitely dangerous. And you can see almost nothing. The firelight creates a sphere of visibility of perhaps 10 or 15 feet in radius. Beyond that, darkness. Complete, total darkness in a way that modern humans rarely experience. No streetlights, no moon when it's a new moon phase, no ambient light from any human source. Just darkness that could conceal anything. Your eyes adjust to the darkness over the time, becoming more sensitive. After an hour, you can make out shapes in starlight, can distinguish between empty space and solid objects, but you can't see details. Can't identify what you're looking at. Can't determine if that shadow is a bush or something crouched, waiting. So how do you sleep in these conditions? The answer is you don't. Not the way you sleep now. Not 8 continuous hours of unconsciousness. Not deep restorative sleep that lasts until morning. You sleep differently, in a way that seems disordered by modern standards but was perfectly adapted to the environment that shaped it. You sleep in cycles. Roughly 90-minute cycles, though the exact length varies from person to person and night to night. Each cycle has stages. light sleep first, where you're only partially unconscious, where any unusual sound will wake you immediately. Then deeper sleep, where your body can begin its restorative work. Then, if you're lucky and conditions allow, the deepest sleep, where growth hormone releases, where cellular repair accelerates, where the body does its most essential maintenance. But you rarely reach that deepest stage for long, because every 90 minutes or so you surface. You don't fully wake, but you come close. Close enough that your conscious mind can briefly assess the situation. Is the fire still burning? Is everyone still accounted for? Are there any new sounds that shouldn't be there? Your brain runs through these checks quickly, usually without you fully waking, and if everything seems safe, you drop back into sleep for another cycle. This is called polyphasic sleep. Multiple phases of sleep separated by brief periods of wakefulness. And it's not a disorder. It's how humans slept for the vast majority of their existence. It's how you still sleep, actually, even in your safe modern bedroom. You wake multiple times each night, you just usually don't remember it, because nothing requires your attention, and you drop back into sleep so quickly. But your ancestors couldn't always drop back into sleep. Sometimes the sounds in the darkness demanded investigation. Sometimes the fire needed tending. Sometimes someone needed to urinate, which meant leaving the safety of the firelight, which meant being vulnerable, which meant another person often went with them because being alone in the darkness was too dangerous. And sometimes sleep just wouldn't come. Despite exhaustion, despite the body's need, despite lying there with eyes closed and breathing slowed, sleep remained elusive, because the brain was running threat assessments, because something felt wrong, even if consciousness couldn't identify what, because the vigilance system that kept your ancestors alive was working exactly as designed, maintaining just enough awareness to ensure that surrender to unconsciousness wasn't surrender to death. This is insomnia, ancient insomnia, not caused by stress about work or relationships or modern life, caused by the fundamental equation that sleep equals vulnerability, and vulnerability in the ancient world often equaled death. The insomnia you might experience tonight, lying in your safe bed, might be an echo of this. Your brain running safety protocols designed for dangerous nights, finding small reasons to keep you partially alert even when logic says you're completely safe. Your ancestors learned to work with this. They learned that sleep would come in fragments, that waking multiple times was normal, that some nights you'd sleep deeply and other nights you'd drowse more than sleep. They learned to rest without requiring perfect conditions, to take sleep when it came and remain calm when it didn't. But more importantly, they learned to share the burden of vigilance. Because here's what made human sleep survivable in dangerous conditions: the group. You're not trying to stay awake all night. That's impossible. The brain cannot maintain vigilance indefinitely. Even the most alert person will eventually drift into microsleeps, brief moments where consciousness shuts down for a few seconds, dangerous moments when threats could approach undetected. So the group evolved a system, not through explicit planning or conscious decision, but through natural selection. The groups that figured this out survived. The groups that didn't. At any given moment through the night, some people are sleeping while others are awake or in light sleep stages. The timing isn't coordinated by discussion, it's coordinated by biology. People have different chronotypes, different natural sleep schedules. Some individuals are naturally more alert in early evening, they'll fall asleep first and wake first. Others are more alert late at night, they'll stay awake longer and sleep later into the morning. These differences, which seem like inconvenient variations in modern life, were survival adaptations. A group with mixed chronotypes has some members naturally alert during different parts of the night. Early-to-bed people maintaining vigilance in the evening hours, late-to-bed people keeping watch in the deep night, early-to-rise people alert as dawn approaches. The group never has all members deeply asleep simultaneously. There's always someone awake or in light sleep stages, able to detect and respond to threats. This is called sentinel behavior, and it's still in you. You still have a chronotype, a natural preference for when you sleep and wake that's partly genetic. Morning people and night people aren't just personal preferences or habits, They're evolutionary roles, different members of the ancestral group specializing in vigilance during different parts of the night, ensuring the group's survival through distributed awareness. When you struggle to sleep at the normal time, when you lie awake while others sleep or feel groggy while others feel alert, you might be experiencing your chronotype asserting itself. Your body trying to follow a schedule designed for a world where your particular sleep pattern contributed to group safety, where being awake when others slept wasn't insomnia, but duty. So picture that night 200,000 years ago again, the fire burning low, needing another log added, someone awake, one of the late-night types, their eyes scanning the darkness, their ears processing sounds. Most of the group sleeping, though none deeply. Children curled against their mothers, gaining warmth and security from physical contact. Adults arranged in rough circles, never so far apart that a threat could pick off someone on the periphery without being noticed. And the hours pass, slowly, so slowly. Because nights are long when you're lying on the ground with nothing to do but wait for dawn. No books to read, no screens to look at, no lights sufficient for any activity requiring vision. Just darkness and time and the slow wheel of stars overhead. Some people wake and don't immediately return to sleep. They lie there, eyes open, staring at the stars or the fire, thoughts moving slowly through their minds. This isn't insomnia to them, it's just the night. They know sleep will return eventually, or dawn will come. Either way, they'll survive this night as they've survived countless nights before. Others sleep more easily, their bodies dropping into deeper stages, their breathing slowing, their muscles relaxing fully. These individuals can sleep through more noise, more disturbance. This seems like an advantage, and sometimes it is. Deep sleep is when the most essential restoration happens, but it's also when you're most vulnerable. The groups that survived had a mix. Some light sleepers who woke easily at any disturbance, providing early warning. Some deep sleepers who could rest more fully, maintaining the physical and mental reserves needed for the next day's challenges. You carry both types of sleep in your ancestry. You might be more like one type or the other, but you have the capacity for both. When you're feeling safe, secure, you might sleep more deeply. When you're in a new place, feeling uncertain, you might sleep more lightly, waking at small noises. This isn't dysfunction. This is your sleep system adjusting to perceived threat level, just as it was designed to do. The night deepens. The hours between midnight and dawn, the hours that feel longest. The hours when the body's temperature drops to its lowest point, when alertness naturally flags, when even the most vigilant person struggles to maintain awareness. These are the dangerous hours. The hours when predators most often attacked, when the fire most often died down to embers, when sleep deprivation accumulated enough to overwhelm even the strongest person's ability to stay awake. And yet the group survives, night after night. Because even in these deep hours, someone is awake. Maybe barely awake, drowsing more than watching, but awake enough to notice when something changes, when the normal night sounds shift, when something that shouldn't be there moves in the darkness, and when that person notices, when the threat becomes real rather than theoretical, the group wakes. All of them instantly, adrenaline flooding their systems, moving from sleep to full alertness in seconds. This capacity for rapid waking, for going from unconscious to aware in moments, this was essential. The groups that could wake quickly survived. The groups that awoke slowly didn't. You still have this. You can still go from deep sleep to full alertness in seconds if the stimulus is strong enough. Your brain is still monitoring threats even during sleep, still capable of pulling you to consciousness instantly if necessary. When you wake suddenly at night, heart pounding, not sure why, you might be experiencing this ancient alarm system activating. No real threat present, but some sound or sensation triggered the protocols designed to wake you when predators approached. Most nights, most alarms were false. The sound was wind, not a predator. The movement was a harmless animal, not a threat. The sense of wrongness was just the vigilance system being overly cautious, and the group would settle back down, return to their fragmented sleep, the cycles continuing through the dark hours. But occasionally the alarm was real, something was out there, something dangerous, and those were the nights when no one slept, when the fire was built up high, when everyone pressed close together, when spears were held ready, and voices were kept to whispers, when the group waited, tense and alert, for either the threat to pass or for enough light to see by, to assess the danger properly. These nights were rare, but they shaped human sleep more than the quiet nights, because these nights were when inattention was fatal, when deep sleep was deadly, when the individuals who could maintain vigilance despite exhaustion were the ones who survived. Natural selection doesn't care about the average night. It cares about the worst nights, the nights when everything goes wrong, and on those nights, the ability to sacrifice sleep for safety was the difference between leaving descendants and becoming prey. So your ancestors evolved to be capable of both. To sleep when safe enough to sleep, but to remain capable of extended wakefulness when circumstances demanded it. To shift between deep rest and hypervigilance as situations required. To carry sleep debt for days if necessary, then sleep deeply when conditions finally allowed. You have this capacity too. You can stay awake for extended periods if you need to. You can function on minimal sleep for days, though you pay a price for it. You can shift from deep sleep to alertness in seconds. These aren't disorders or dysfunctions, they are ancient capabilities, still present, still functional, but they come with a cost. Because maintaining these capabilities requires your sleep system to remain somewhat sensitive, somewhat responsive to threat signals. Even in your safe modern bedroom, your brain is still running background checks, still monitoring for threats, still ready to wake you if something seems wrong. And sometimes, often actually, it decides something is wrong when objectively you're perfectly safe. This is the inheritance of sleeping without homes, without safety, for 300,000 years. Sleep that's conditional rather than automatic. Sleep that's earned rather than assumed. Sleep that requires your nervous system to first verify, consciously or unconsciously, that it's safe enough to surrender awareness. And now, in your modern bed, in your locked home, in your climate-controlled room, you're trying to sleep with a nervous system calibrated for dangerous conditions. A system that keeps checking, is it safe? Is it really safe? Are you sure it's safe? And sometimes, even with all the objective evidence of safety, some part of your ancient brain says, not quite sure, better stay partly alert just in case. This is what we're going to explore over the next 2 hours, not just how your ancestors slept, but why you sleep the way you do. Why sleep is so fragile, so easily disrupted. Why the hours around 3 a.m. feel so different. Why sleeping in new places is harder. Why you sometimes wake for no apparent reason. All of it makes sense when you understand the context it evolved for. So settle in, let your body relax against whatever surface holds you. Let your breathing deepen. You don't need to fight your sleep system tonight. You just need to understand it. And perhaps, in understanding, find a way to work with it rather than against it. The story of human sleep is just beginning, and there's something both humbling and comforting about knowing that the difficulty you're experiencing right now, the challenge of letting go into unconsciousness, it's the same challenge your ancestors faced every single night for hundreds of thousands of years. They managed. Somehow, despite everything, they slept. And so will you. Let's step backward now, further than you've probably imagined, to a time before sleep was something you could take for granted, before rest meant safety. Picture yourself again on that African savanna 200,000 years ago. You've been lying there for perhaps 20 minutes. The fire is still burning. The group is quiet. Your body is tired and your mind is slowing down. And gradually, without quite noticing the transition, you drift from wakefulness into something that's almost sleep, but not quite. This is stage 1 sleep, a twilight zone between consciousness and unconsciousness. Your eyes might move slowly behind your closed lids. Your muscles start to relax, though they haven't released tension completely. Your breathing becomes more regular, your heart rate slows slightly, and crucially, you're still processing sounds from the environment, still monitoring for threats, still capable of snapping to full alertness within a fraction of a second, This stage only lasts 5 to 10 minutes usually. It's a transition, a bridge between waking and sleeping. And for your ancestors, it served a crucial purpose. It allowed the body to begin relaxing while maintaining the ability to respond immediately to danger. It was a compromise between the need for rest and the need for vigilance. In your modern bedroom, you pass through this stage quickly, barely noticing it. But in dangerous environments, this stage could last longer. The body reluctant to go deeper, to surrender more awareness, until it felt safe enough to do so. When you lie in bed unable to fall asleep, when you're stuck in that frustrating zone of being tired but not quite sleeping, you might be stuck in stage 1. Your body waiting for safety signals that your conscious mind knows are already present, but your nervous system isn't quite convinced of. After several minutes in stage 1, if conditions remain calm, if no threats materialize, your body moves into stage 2. This is proper sleep now, though still relatively light. Your body temperature drops slightly. Your heart rate slows further. Your muscles release more tension. And something interesting happens in your brain. Sleep spindles begin. These are brief bursts of brain activity, little storms of neural firing that last only a second or two. Researchers still don't fully understand what sleep spindles do, but they seem to be involved in memory consolidation. Your brain, now protected by sleep, begins processing the day's experiences, deciding what to keep and what to discard, strengthening the neural connections that matter and letting others fade. For your ancestors, this was essential. Memory consolidation meant learning from experience without needing to repeat dangerous mistakes. The person who remembered which plants were edible, which water sources were reliable, which animal tracks meant danger, that person survived. And memory consolidation happens primarily during sleep. Without adequate sleep, memory formation suffers. Your ancestors who slept poorly remembered less, learned slower, made more mistakes. Natural selection favoured those who could sleep well enough to consolidate memories, but lightly enough to remain aware of threats. Stage 2 sleep dominates most of the night. You spend roughly half your total sleep time in this stage. It's deep enough to be restorative, but light enough to wake from relatively easily. It's the compromise stage, balancing the need for rest with the need for responsiveness, and it makes sense that this would be the most common stage in ancestral sleep. Deep enough to provide benefit, but not so deep as to be dangerous. Imagine lying there on the African savanna in stage 2 sleep. A sound reaches your ears, something moving in the grass 30 feet away. Your brain processes this sound without fully waking you. It's not loud enough to trigger immediate alarm, but it's not a normal sound either. So your sleep lightens. You move back towards stage 1 briefly, your body tensing slightly, your awareness increasing. The sound repeats. Your brain categorizes it. Probably not a threat. Probably just a small animal. Probably safe to remain asleep. And gradually you slip back into stage 2. The threat assessment complete, the vigilance system satisfied, your body allowed to continue resting. This happens multiple times each night, most of the time without you consciously waking. Your sleep is constantly adjusting depth based on the threat level your nervous system perceives. This is why you sleep more lightly in new places. Your brain doesn't have a threat map for this environment yet. It doesn't know which sounds are normal and which aren't. So it keeps you in lighter sleep stages, ready to wake quickly if needed. This isn't insomnia. This is your ancestral sleep system doing exactly what it evolved to do, being cautious in unfamiliar environments. After perhaps 45 minutes of stages 1 and 2, if everything has remained calm, if the fire is still burning, if no threats have materialized, your body takes a risk. It goes deeper, into stage 3, slow wave sleep, the deepest and most restorative stage of sleep. This is where the real magic happens. Your brain waves slow dramatically, becoming large synchronized waves that roll through your neural tissue. Your body temperature drops to its lowest point of the night. Your breathing becomes slow and regular. Your muscles relax completely. and your body begins its most intensive maintenance work. Growth hormone releases during slow-wave sleep. This hormone drives cellular repair, tissue growth, immune function. Without adequate slow-wave sleep, your body cannot maintain itself properly. Wounds heal slower. Immune function weakens. The cellular damage that accumulates during waking hours cannot be fully repaired. Your ancestors needed this stage desperately. Their bodies took tremendous daily abuse, walking 15 or 20 kilometers across rough terrain, lifting, carrying, climbing, running when necessary, fighting off infections without antibiotics, healing injuries without medical care. They needed slow-wave sleep to survive, to maintain the physical capacity that kept them alive. But slow-wave sleep came with a serious drawback. You're very difficult to wake during this stage. Sounds that would instantly wake you from stage 1 or 2 barely register during slow-wave sleep. The brain's monitoring of the environment decreases dramatically. You're deeply unconscious, unaware, vulnerable. This is the gamble. The body needs slow-wave sleep to function, but entering slow-wave sleep means accepting significant risk. For your ancestors, this gamble was only acceptable when conditions were as safe as they could be. When the fire was strong, the group was close, the night was quiet. When the probability of attack seemed low enough to justify the risk of deep unconsciousness. Even then, your ancestors didn't stay in slow-wave sleep for long. 20 or 30 minutes typically, sometimes less. Enough to get the critical restoration work done, but not so long that the group remained maximally vulnerable for extended periods. Then the sleep would lighten again, moving back up through stage 2 toward wakefulness. This is the first sleep cycle complete. Roughly 90 minutes from the start of stage 1 to the end of slow-wave sleep. And then, before starting another cycle, your brain does something remarkable. It enters REM sleep. Rapid eye movement sleep, the dreaming stage. REM sleep is paradoxical. Your brain becomes almost as active as when you're awake. Your eyes move rapidly behind closed lids. Your heart rate and the breathing become irregular. Your brain fires in patterns that look nearly identical to waking consciousness. But your muscles become paralyzed, unable to move except for small twitches. Your body is intensely active mentally and completely still physically. Why? Why would evolution create a sleep stage that combines waking-like brain activity with paralysis? It seems inefficient, even dangerous. But REM sleep serves purposes that might have been crucial for ancestral survival. Dreams happen primarily during REM sleep. And dreams, particularly the vivid narrative dreams you sometimes remember, they often involve threatening scenarios, being chased, being attacked, losing something important, failing at crucial moments. These aren't random, they're simulations. Your brain practicing responses to threats in a safe environment, learning from scenarios that haven't actually happened yet. An ancestor who dreamed about leopard attacks might recognize the warning signs faster when a real leopard appeared. Someone who dreamed about getting lost might remember landmarks better in waking life. The person who rehearsed social conflicts in dreams might navigate actual social challenges more successfully. Dreams as practice, as mental preparation, as a way to gain experience without actual risk. But REM sleep served another purpose too: emotional regulation, the processing and integration of the emotional experiences from waking life. Your ancestors faced emotionally intense situations regularly. Conflicts within the group, losses of people they cared about, the constant stress of surviving in dangerous conditions. Without some way to process these emotions, the psychological load would become overwhelming. REM sleep seems to help with this. During REM, the brain revisits emotional experiences and processes them, often reducing their intensity. The nightmare you have about losing someone might actually be helping you prepare for that possibility, reducing the shock if it ever happens. The dream about conflict might help you work through the emotions without carrying them into the next day. This was crucial for group living. Your ancestors needed to maintain social cohesion despite frequent conflicts and stressors. REM sleep might have helped by processing the day's emotional difficulties, allowing people to wake with a fresher perspective, less burdened by yesterday's troubles. The groups that slept well might have gotten along better, cooperated more effectively, survived more successfully. So here's the complete cycle. Light sleep in stage 1, transitioning to stage 2, deepening into slow wave sleep if conditions allow, then lightening again into REM sleep. The whole cycle takes about 90 minutes, though this varies, and then it repeats. 4 or 5 cycles per night typically, each one slightly different from the last. The first cycle has the most slow wave sleep. Your body prioritizes physical restoration early in the night, getting the most critical maintenance done first. Later cycles have more REM sleep, more dreaming, more emotional processing. By morning, your sleep is mostly stage 2 and REM, lighter stages that make waking easier. This pattern makes evolutionary sense. Early in the night, when you're most exhausted and when any threats are least likely to be nearby, you sleep most deeply. As night progresses toward dawn, as accumulated sleep reduces your sleep pressure, as predators become more active in the pre-dawn hours, your sleep naturally lightens. By the time morning arrives, you're sleeping so lightly that natural light and sounds can wake you without difficulty. Your ancestors didn't need alarm clocks. Their sleep naturally lightened toward dawn, preparing them to wake when the first light appeared. And in that pre-dawn period, someone in the group was always awake or nearly so, maintaining vigilance through the vulnerable transition between night and day. But here's where it gets really interesting. These sleep cycles, this 90-minute rhythm, it doesn't stop when you wake up. It continues throughout the day as an underlying pulse in your alertness and energy levels. Every 90 minutes or so, you experience a slight dip in alertness, a moment when focus becomes harder, when you naturally want to rest. These are called ultradian rhythms, and for your ancestors, they had practical implications. The midday dip in alertness, the one you might fight through with caffeine in your modern life, that was often respected in ancestral environments. Many hunter-gatherer groups observed what we might call siestas, brief rest periods during the hottest part of the day, when activity was difficult anyway. Not full sleep, necessarily, but rest. A break from the demands of vigilance and work. This suggests that human sleep might not have been confined to nighttime only. The ancestral sleep patterns might have included daytime rest periods as well. Not because your ancestors were lazy, but because the ultradian rhythm was asserting itself, and because respecting these rhythms meant better overall function. Modern hunter-gatherer groups studied by anthropologists show these patterns. They sleep at night, but not always continuously. They wake, they rest during the day sometimes, they nap. Their sleep is more flexible, more distributed across the 24-hour cycle than the single consolidated sleep period that modern life demands. And here's something else researchers have found. When modern people are removed from artificial light, when they're placed in environments that mimic ancestral conditions, their sleep patterns change. They start sleeping in 2 distinct periods separated by a few hours of wakefulness in the middle of the night. Sleep for 3 or 4 hours, wake for 1 or 2 hours, then sleep again until morning. This is called biphasic sleep, and historical records suggest it was common in pre-industrial Europe. People would sleep their first sleep, then wake for a period they called the watch. During the watch, they might talk quietly, pray, have sex, or simply lie awake thinking. Then they'd return to their second sleep until dawn. Was this the ancestral pattern? We can't be certain, but it suggests that the consolidated 8-hour sleep block that modern life demands might be artificially imposed rather than natural. That human sleep might be inherently more flexible, more segmented, more responsive to environmental conditions than our current sleep guidelines suggest. Your ancestors slept when they could, as deeply as conditions allowed, waking as circumstances required. Some nights they slept deeply, other nights barely at all. The variation was normal, expected, built into the system. They didn't stress about sleep quality because there was no concept of optimal sleep to fail to achieve. They just slept, or didn't, and dealt with the consequences. This contrasts sharply with modern sleep advice, which emphasizes consistency, regularity, the same bedtime and wake time every day. This advice works for modern life, but it might be fighting against ancestral flexibility. Your sleep system evolved to be adaptable, to shift patterns based on conditions. Forcing it into rigid schedules might create stress for some people, a sense of failure or when the schedule can't be maintained. Now let's talk about something that changed everything for human sleep. Something that created a threshold between barely surviving the night and actually sleeping with some degree of safety. The mastery of fire. Picture yourself back on that savanna, but now it's perhaps 400,000 years ago. Fire exists, has existed as long as there's been dry vegetation and lightning. But controlled fire that humans can make and maintain, that's new. That's revolutionary. The first humans who figured out how to keep fire alive, who learned which wood burns long, which burns hot, how to maintain embers overnight, how to restart flames from coals, these people changed human sleep forever. Because fire created a sphere of safety in the darkness. Not perfect safety, not complete protection, but significantly better odds than darkness alone provided. Lions and hyenas and leopards, they're cautious about fire. Not terrified necessarily, but wary. Fire means pain, means danger to them as much as to any animal. A strong fire, well maintained, will keep most predators at a distance. Not all predators, not always, but often enough to matter. Often enough to allow humans to sleep more deeply, to take more chances with unconsciousness, to get the restorative sleep they desperately needed. Watch how a human group with fire sleeps versus a group without. The difference is profound. Without fire, vigilance is constant, sleep is minimal, every sound triggers near waking. With fire, there's still vigilance, still interrupted sleep, but the overall depth and quality improves dramatically. People can reach slow-wave sleep more reliably. REM sleep lasts longer. The cycles complete more fully. This meant better physical restoration, faster healing, stronger immune function, better memory consolidation, more effective emotional regulation. The humans who slept by firelight were cognitively sharper, physically healthier, emotionally more stable than those who slept in pure darkness. And these advantages compounded over time, over generations, driving human evolution toward greater and greater dependence on fire. But fire came with costs. Fire requires maintenance, constant feeding, constant attention. Someone always responsible for keeping it alive. This meant that truly deep sleep, the complete surrender of awareness that full safety might allow, this remained elusive even with fire. Because fire could die. And if it died at the wrong moment, if everyone slept too deeply and the flames went out before dawn, the group was suddenly vulnerable again. So the sentinel behavior continued. The taking turns, the mixed chronotypes, the light sleepers who woke at any change in the fire's sound or brightness. Fire reduced the burden of vigilance but didn't eliminate it. Sleep improved but remained fragmented. The architecture of human sleep, shaped by hundreds of thousands of years without fire, continued to operate even after fire became universal. You still carry this. Your sleep is still structured around the assumption that complete safety is never guaranteed. That vigilance must be maintained even during sleep. That waking frequently to check conditions is adaptive rather than dysfunctional. Fire gave your ancestors better sleep, but it didn't give them perfect sleep, and the sleep patterns that evolved during the long pre-fire period remained largely unchanged. Now, let's move forward in time. Let's come to the period when humans began to create the first real shelters. Not homes yet, not permanent structures, but intentional arrangements that offered protection beyond what fire alone could provide. Picture yourself perhaps 50,000 years ago. Your group has found a rock overhang, a natural shelter formed by geological processes. It's not much, just a roof of stone protecting an area perhaps 20 feet deep and 30 feet wide. But it's something. It offers protection from rain, from wind, from some of the exposure that makes nighttime so uncomfortable. And crucially, it has a back wall. This means the group can arrange itself differently. Instead of a circle around a fire, everyone exposed to potential threats from all directions, the group can press against the back wall. Now, threats can only approach from one direction, the fire can be positioned at the opening. The sentinel only needs to watch one approach, rather than scanning constantly in all directions. This is a profound psychological shift. The reduction in perceived threat level allows for deeper sleep. People who might have remained in stage 2 all night can now reach slow-wave sleep reliably. Children who struggle to sleep in the open can relax enough to get the deep rest they need for growth and development. The group as a whole sleeps better, functions better, survives better. But here's what's interesting. Even with this improvement, even with a roof and a wall, human sleep doesn't become perfect. It doesn't transform into 8 hours of uninterrupted unconsciousness. The cycling continues. The light sleep stages still dominate. The frequent waking still occurs. Because the basic architecture of sleep, established over millions of years in much more dangerous conditions, that architecture is stable. It doesn't change quickly just because conditions improve slightly. Evolution is conservative. It keeps what works until there's overwhelming pressure to change. And for human sleep, the pressure to change remained minimal even as shelter improved. Because even the best natural shelter wasn't perfectly safe. Even the most protected location could be approached by determined predators. Even with walls and fire, vigilance remained necessary. So the sleep patterns persisted. And they persist still in you, in your modern bedroom with your locks and walls and climate control. Your sleep architecture is ancient. It was already well established before humans built the first intentional shelters. And once established, once genetically encoded, it became remarkably resistant to change. This is why improving your sleep environment only helps so much. You can have the perfect mattress, the perfect temperature, the perfect darkness. And yes, these things help. They reduce the perceived threat level, allowing your sleep system to relax slightly. But they don't fundamentally alter the architecture. You'll still cycle through stages. You'll still wake briefly multiple times. You'll still have nights where sleep is light and fragmented despite optimal conditions. Because the system isn't broken. It's just old. Very, very old. Older than modern humans as a species. Old enough that changing it would require evolutionary pressures that no longer exist and wouldn't have time to work even if they did. Let's talk about one more aspect of ancestral sleep before we move to how all this connects to your modern experience. Let's talk about social sleep, because your ancestors rarely slept alone, almost never in fact. Sleep was a social activity done in close proximity to other people, often in physical contact. Picture that group again, arranged around their fire, or pressed against the back wall of their shelter. They're not spread out, they're close together, close enough to touch, adults sleeping near other adults, children sleeping against or between parents, older individuals integrated into the group rather than isolated. This wasn't just about warmth, though that mattered in cold conditions. It was about something deeper, something about how human nervous systems regulate themselves through proximity to other humans. When you sleep near someone you trust, someone who's part of your social group, your nervous system receives safety signals. Their breathing, their warmth, their presence. All of these communicate at a level below consciousness that you're not alone, that someone else is maintaining vigilance, that threats, if they appear, won't face just you but the group. This allowed for deeper sleep. Solo individuals, sleeping apart from the group, slept more lightly. Their threat assessment system couldn't fully relax because there was no social safety net. But individuals sleeping in the group could trust that someone would notice threats, would raise alarm, would wake the group if necessary. This distributed vigilance meant everyone could sleep somewhat deeper than they could alone. Modern sleep research confirms this. People often sleep better with a trusted partner than alone. Not always. Not if the partner snores or moves excessively, but generally. The presence of another person provides unconscious safety signals that help the sleep system relax. But modern sleep also involves something your ancestors rarely experienced: sleeping in separate rooms, in separate houses, isolated from the group. For most of human existence, everyone slept within a few feet of everyone else. Now you might sleep separated from other people by walls, by distance, by social structures that value privacy over proximity. For some nervous systems, this isolation creates subtle stress. The sleep system, accustomed to social cues and group presence, doesn't receive the safety signals it evolved to expect. So it maintains higher vigilance, lighter sleep, more frequent waking. This isn't anxiety or insomnia in the clinical sense. It's the sleep system doing what it was designed to do, being more cautious when you're alone. If you sleep better with someone in the house than when you're alone, even if they're in another room, this might explain it. Your nervous system detecting presence, even distant presence, and adjusting threat levels accordingly. Not consciously, not rationally, but through ancient mechanisms that track social proximity as a safety factor. So here you are, carrying a sleep system designed for conditions that no longer exist. A system that expects to sleep on the ground in groups, near fire, surrounded by darkness filled with actual threats. A system that cycles through stages, wakes frequently, remains ready to respond to danger at any moment. And you're trying to use this system in a modern bedroom, alone, or with just one other person, on a soft surface that might actually be too comfortable for optimal sleep signaling, in complete darkness or with artificial light, in perfect silence or with sounds your brain doesn't recognize as safe, at times determined by work schedules rather than natural sleep pressure, for durations that might be longer or shorter than what your sleep cycles naturally want to complete. No wonder sleep is sometimes difficult. You're not failing at sleep. You're trying to sleep in a context your sleep system wasn't designed for, using equipment calibrated for a world that disappeared thousands of years ago. The real surprise isn't that modern people sometimes struggle with sleep. It's that we sleep as well as we do given the profound mismatch between our evolutionary heritage and our current circumstances. But understanding this mismatch, recognizing that your sleep difficulties might not be personal failings but evolutionary inheritances, that understanding can help. Not fix everything, not make sleep perfect, but perhaps reduce the anxiety about sleep that often makes sleep problems worse. Perhaps allow you to work with your sleep system rather than fighting it. We're going to explore that more in the next part. How ancient sleep patterns manifest in modern life. What happens when 300,000 years of adaptation to dangerous nights encounters safe bedrooms? Why understanding your ancestral sleep might be the key to making peace with your modern sleep. But for now, as you're lying there, perhaps you can appreciate something. Your sleep system, fragmented and frustrating as it sometimes is, it kept your ancestors alive for hundreds of thousands of years. It maintained their health, consolidated their memories, regulated their emotions, allowed them to survive and eventually thrive in circumstances that would terrify most modern humans. That system is still working, still trying to keep you safe, still following protocols written in your genes over countless generations. It's not broken, it's just very, very old. And tonight, as you cycle through stages and wake briefly and perhaps struggle to fall back asleep, you're experiencing what every human has experienced since humans have been human. The ancient rhythm of sleep, the cautious surrender to unconsciousness, the balance between rest and vigilance that kept your genetic line alive. Rest now. Your sleep system knows what it's doing, even when it feels like it doesn't. Even when it keeps you awake when you want to sleep. It's following ancient wisdom, keeping you safe according to rules that made sense for a very long time. Trust it. Not completely, but enough. Enough to stop fighting it. Enough to let it do what it evolved to do. Sleep will come. It always does. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not immediately. But eventually, inevitably, sleep will come. Because it has to. Because you need it. Because your body and brain cannot function without it. And because for 300,000 years, no matter how difficult the conditions, no matter how dangerous the night, your ancestors managed to sleep enough to survive until morning. You come from sleepers, from people who figured out how to rest in the least restful circumstances imaginable, from people who closed their eyes in the darkness and trusted their group, their vigilance, their ancient sleep cycles to carry them through to dawn. And dawn always came, as it will come for you, after this long night, after this journey through the evolutionary origins of sleep, after you finally surrender to the cycles that have been waiting patiently for you to stop resisting. Sleep. Let the ancient patterns carry you. They know the way. They have been finding it for hundreds of thousands of years. So here's where it gets really interesting, and perhaps really relevant to you lying there tonight, maybe struggling to sleep despite being in an objectively the safest, most comfortable sleeping conditions humans have ever experienced. We've traced sleep back here to its origins. We understand the evolutionary pressures that shaped it, the cycles and sages, the vigilance that couldn't be turned off even during rest. But that was then. That was the world your sleep system evolved for. Now let's talk about what happens when that ancient system encounters modern life. Let's start with something simple, something that might be happening to you right now. You're lying in your bedroom. It's probably somewhere between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. You're tired. You know you need to sleep. You've done everything right. You went to bed at a reasonable time. You're in comfortable pajamas or whatever you sleep in. The temperature is good. The room is dark or mostly dark. There's no reason you shouldn't be asleep. And yet you're awake. Your body is tired, but your mind is alert. You might feel a slight tension in your chest, a subtle awareness of your heartbeat. Your thoughts are moving, not racing exactly, but not settling either. You're aware of small sounds, the house settling, traffic in the distance, your own breathing. This is your ancient sleep system running its threat assessment protocols, and it's finding problems. Not real problems, not objective dangers, but problems according to the ancient criteria it was designed to evaluate. Let's break down what your sleep system is checking for, consciously or unconsciously, and why it might not be satisfied even in your safe modern bedroom. First, it's checking for social presence. Remember, your ancestors almost never slept alone. They slept in groups, within touching distance of other people. The presence of others provided safety signals, distributed vigilance, the unconscious assurance that someone was watching while you slept. If you're sleeping alone tonight, your sleep system notices this. It doesn't necessarily register as conscious thought. You don't think, I'm alone and therefore in danger. But your nervous system tracks social isolation as a threat factor, because for hundreds of thousands of years, being alone at night was genuinely dangerous. This might be why you sleep differently when someone else is in the house. Even if they're in another room, even if you can't see or hear them, your nervous system detects their presence. Through subtle sounds, through the sense of the space being occupied, through mechanisms we don't fully understand, and it adjusts. It relaxes slightly. It allows sleep to deepen somewhat. The effect is stronger if someone is in the same room. Stronger still if someone is in the same bed. Your sleep system receiving clear signals, not alone, group present, distributed vigilance possible, safer to sleep deeply. This isn't about fear or anxiety in the conscious sense. It's about ancient threat assessment running in the background. But modern life often means sleeping alone, in separate rooms from partners, in apartments away from family, in circumstances where social isolation is normal and expected. Your conscious mind knows this is fine. Your ancient sleep system isn't so sure. Second, your sleep system is checking the environment. And here's where modern bedrooms can actually create problems despite being objectively safer than anything your ancestors experienced. Your bedroom is probably very dark, much darker than ancestral sleeping conditions. Your ancestors slept by firelight, which meant there was always some illumination. They could see shapes, movement, fellow group members. The darkness was never absolute except on moonless nights far from the fire, and those were the most dangerous conditions. Complete darkness might seem optimal for sleep, and for some people it is, but for others, particularly those with nervous systems calibrated more toward vigilance, complete darkness can be subtly activating. Because in ancestral conditions, complete darkness meant maximum danger. It meant you were far from fire, far from the group's centre, potentially exposed. So some people sleep better with a small light. Not bright, not enough to read by, just enough to see shapes. Their sleep system receiving the signal, there's light, we have fire, we're not completely exposed, this isn't childish or irrational. It's ancient threat assessment, finding the darkness level it evolved to trust. Then there's sound. Your modern bedroom might be very quiet, especially if you live in a well-insulated home, away from others. This seems ideal. But ancestral sleep was never quiet. There were always sounds, the fire crackling, people breathing nearby, normal night sounds from the environment. These sounds provided information. They confirmed that conditions were normal, unchanged, safe enough to continue sleeping. Complete silence can be slightly activating for some nervous systems, because silence in ancestral conditions could mean something had gone wrong. The fire had died. The group had been attacked or fled. Something was out there causing all other sounds to cease. Silence meant pay attention, something's changed, assess the situation. This is why some people sleep better with white noise or ambient sound, their sleep system receiving the background auditory information it evolved to use for threat assessment. Not silence, which triggers caution, but consistent, normal sounds that signal everything is as it should be. Then there's the sleeping surface itself. Your mattress is probably soft, probably comfortable, certainly more comfortable than the ground your ancestors slept on. But here's something interesting that sleep researchers have found. Some people actually sleep worse on very soft mattresses. Why? Because your sleep system uses proprioceptive feedback, information from your muscles and joints about your body's position, to help assess safety. Your ancestors slept on hard ground. Their bodies adapted to this. They could sense the ground beneath them, could feel the solidity, could make micro-adjustments to position throughout the night. On a very soft mattress, you sink in. Your proprioceptive system receives less clear information about your position. Your sleep system might interpret this subtle sensory confusion as potential threat, not consciously, but at the level of ancient protocols. Some firmness, some resistance helps your body know where it is in space, helps the sleep system relax into the position. This doesn't mean you should sleep on the floor, but it might explain why some people prefer firmer mattresses despite softer ones seeming more comfortable. Their sleep systems functioning better with sleeping surfaces that more closely approximate ancestral conditions. Now let's talk about something that affects many people. The difficulty sleeping in new places. Hotels, friends' houses, anywhere that isn't your usual sleeping environment. This is called the first night echo, and it's well documented in sleep research. People sleep more lightly, wake more frequently, get less slow-wave sleep on their first night in a new place. Why? Because your sleep system doesn't have a threat map for this environment yet. It doesn't know which sounds are normal here, which creaks and noises are just the building settling versus potential danger. It doesn't know the spatial layout, the entry points, the escape routes. It doesn't know who else is nearby, how trustworthy they are, whether they're maintaining vigilance. So it keeps you in lighter sleep stages. More stage 1 and 2, less slow-wave sleep, less REM sleep, ready to wake quickly if needed. Gathering information about this new environment, building a mental map of normal versus abnormal. This is your ancestral vigilance system doing exactly what it evolved to do. Being cautious in unfamiliar territory, because unfamiliar territory was where threats were most likely to materialize. Usually by the second or third night, your sleep normalizes. Your brain has gathered enough information, built enough of a threat map to relax slightly. But that first night, sometimes several nights, your sleep system refuses to fully trust this new environment. And there's nothing wrong with you for experiencing this. It's ancient adaptiveness, still active, still keeping you as safe as it knows how. This extends to sleeping positions too. Your ancestors had limited options. Side sleeping was most common because it allowed quick movement if needed. Sleeping on your back left you more exposed, took longer to stand from. Sleeping on your stomach limited your ability to see threats approaching. The positions humans naturally prefer, particularly the fetal position on your side, these aren't random. They're positions that balanced comfort with readiness to respond. And you still have these preferences. You probably have a favoured sleeping position, one that feels most secure. This isn't just about physical comfort. It's about your sleep system's assessment of vulnerability. Some positions trigger slightly more vigilance, others allow slightly more relaxation. Your preferred position is probably the one your particular nervous system has learned to trust most. Now, let's talk about something that's probably familiar to many of you: waking in the middle of the night. Specifically waking between 2 and 4 a.m. and having difficulty returning to sleep. This is incredibly common. Some estimates suggest 30 to 40% of adults experience this regularly. And while there can be medical reasons, stress factors, and other explanations, there's also an evolutionary component that's often overlooked. Remember that ancestral sleep was biphasic for some people. Sleep for several hours, wake for an hour or two, sleep again until dawn. This wasn't insomnia. It was a normal pattern, possibly the natural human sleep pattern, before artificial lighting changed everything. When you wake at 3 a.m. and can't immediately return to sleep, you might be experiencing this ancestral pattern asserting itself. Your body completing a natural sleep cycle, surfacing to check conditions, and in the absence of clear signals to resume sleep, remaining partially awake. Your ancestors, waking during the night, had things to do during this wake period. The fire might need tending, children might need attention, someone might need to urinate, which required leaving the sleeping area, and thus required another person to accompany them for safety. These nighttime wakings had functions, had purposes beyond just being awake, but you, waking at 3 a.m. in your modern bedroom, you have no function to fulfill. Nothing productive you can do. Just lying there, awake, aware that you should be asleep but can't seem to return to it. This creates anxiety. Worry about not getting enough sleep. Concern about how tired you'll be tomorrow. And this anxiety makes falling back asleep even harder. Your ancestors didn't have this anxiety. They woke, they did whatever needed doing or simply rested quietly, and there they eventually returned to sleep. There was no concept of optimal sleep to fail to achieve. No worry about sleep quality affecting next day performance. Sleep was what it was, and they worked with what they got. This is where modern knowledge about sleep might actually be causing some of your sleep problems. You know how much sleep you're supposed to get. You know the stages are important. You know that poor sleep affects health and performance. So when you wake at 3 a.m., you add worry about sleep to the original wakefulness. You create a secondary problem, anxiety about the primary problem of being awake. Your ancestors just were awake, without judgment, without concern. And perhaps that acceptance, that lack of fight against wakefulness, allowed them to return to sleep more easily when their body was ready. Whereas you fighting the wakefulness, creating stress about it, might be preventing the very sleep you're trying to force. Let's talk about another modern sleep challenge. The pressure to sleep at the same time every night, to wake at the same time every morning. This is called sleep hygiene, and it's generally good advice for managing modern life. Consistency helps regulate circadian rhythms, improves sleep quality for many people. But it's also completely unlike ancestral sleep patterns. Your ancestors slept when they were tired and conditions allowed. Some nights they slept more, other nights less. Their sleep was responsive to conditions rather than scheduled. If they'd been very active that day, they might sleep more deeply and longer. If they'd rested during the day, they might need less night's sleep. If conditions were dangerous, they'd sleep less, regardless of how tired they were. This flexibility was adaptive. It meant humans could adjust to varying conditions without the stress of failing to meet some arbitrary sleep standard. But modern life removes this flexibility. You need to wake at a specific time for work, school, other obligations. This means you need to sleep at a specific time to get adequate rest. Your sleep becomes scheduled, rewalled, rather than responsive. For some people, their nervous systems adapt well to this. They can train themselves to sleep and wake on schedule regardless of other factors. But for others, particularly those with a more sensitive sleep system, the rigidity creates stress. They might not be tired at the scheduled bedtime, or they might be exhausted but unable to sleep because their nervous system is responding to factors other than time on the clock. This isn't failure. It's a nervous system that's more responsive to ancestral factors, environmental cues, threat levels, social signals, physical exhaustion levels, than to arbitrary scheduling. It's trying to sleep the old way in a new context that demands precision it wasn't designed to provide. Now let's talk about something that's become increasingly important in modern life: the impact of artificial light on sleep. Because this is where modern life creates perhaps its most dramatic conflict with ancestral sleep patterns. Your ancestors lived by natural light cycles. As the sun set, as darkness fell, their bodies began preparing for sleep. Melatonin, the hormone that promotes sleep, started releasing in response to darkness. Their circadian rhythms, the internal 24-hour clocks that all humans carry, synchronized with the natural day-night cycle. There was no fighting this. When it got dark, you got sleepy. When dawn came, you woke up. The system worked because an environment and biology were aligned. Then humans invented fire, which extended useful hours into the night, but not dramatically. Firelight is dim, flickering, orange-toned. It doesn't suppress melatonin the way bright light does. Your ancestors sitting by firelight in the evening, they were still receiving darkness signals, still moving towards sleep readiness, just more gradually than they would have in pure darkness. But modern artificial lighting, particularly the blue-rich light from screens, this suppresses melatonin powerfully. You can be looking at a bright screen at 11 p.m. and your body receives signals that it's still daytime. Your circadian rhythm doesn't advance towards sleep readiness. Your melatonin doesn't release. You remain alert, awake, even if you're physically tired. Then you turn off the screen, get into bed, expect to fall asleep immediately. But your body hasn't had time to transition. Your melatonin needs time to rise to sleep-promoting levels. Your core body temperature needs time to drop. Your nervous system needs time to shift from day mode to night mode. You're trying to sleep without the gradual transition your sleep system evolved to expect. This creates what researchers call social jet lag. Your biological clock wants to sleep and wake on one schedule, determined by light exposure and other factors. Your social obligations demand a different schedule. The mismatch creates a constant state of mild circadian disruption. You're always slightly out of sync with yourself, never quite alert during wake hours, never quite ready to sleep during sleep hours. Your ancestors never experienced this. Their light exposure and sleep timing were automatically coordinated. Sunset meant preparing for sleep. Sunrise meant waking. There was no option to extend the day artificially, to override the biological signals telling them it was time to rest. Now you have that option. You can stay up late despite darkness. You can wake early despite lack of natural light. You can live on a schedule completely divorced from natural cycles. And your sleep system tries to adapt, but it's not designed for this level of flexibility. It evolved to follow light-dark cycles, and when those cycles become chaotic or artificial, sleep quality suffers. Let's talk about another major modern factor: stress. But not just any stress. The particular type of chronic, low-level psychological stress that modern life creates. Your ancestors faced acute stress. A predator appearing, a conflict within the group, a dangerous hunt. These stressors were intense but temporary. They'd spike your stress hormones, activate your threat response, but then resolve one way or another. Either the threat was dealt with or it wasn't. Either way, the stress ended. This type of acute stress doesn't interfere much with sleep. In fact, after intense stress, your body often craves sleep, needs sleep to recover. Your ancestors, after a dangerous day, would sleep deeply, their bodies repairing the stress damage, their brains processing the intense experiences. But modern stress is different. It's chronic. It's psychological rather than physical. It doesn't resolve neatly. You're worried about work, about relationships, about finances, about health, about the future. These worries don't have clear resolutions. They persist day after day, creating a baseline of stress that never quite releases. This chronic stress keeps your stress hormones elevated. Your cortisol, which should drop at night to allow sleep, might remain higher than optimal. Your nervous system maintains a state of subtle activation, ready to deal with threats that are amorphous and ongoing rather than concrete and time-limited. And this interferes with sleep. Not dramatically necessarily. You can still fall asleep, still cycle through stages, but the sleep is lighter, less restorative. You wake more frequently. You have more difficulty returning to sleep. Your slow-wave sleep decreases. Your REM sleep becomes fragmented. The overall quality declines even if the quantity seems adequate. Your ancestors rarely experienced this type of stress. Their stressors were usually immediate and resolvable. The chronic, grinding stress of modern life, the constant low-level worry about things you can't immediately address, this is new, and your sleep system, which evolved to recover from acute stress, struggles to adapt to chronic stress that never resolves. This is why stress management and sleep hygiene often get linked. It's not that stress management directly makes you sleep better, it's that reducing chronic stress allows your stress hormone levels to normalize, allows your nervous system to shift out of constant low-level activation, which then allows your sleep system to function more as it was designed to. Now let's talk about something that might seem counterintuitive: the problems created by sleeping in conditions that are too safe, too comfortable, too controlled. Your sleep system evolved to function in challenging conditions. Variable temperatures, hard ground, background noise, social proximity, the need for vigilance. These conditions kept your sleep system active, engaged, responsive. Your body had to work to maintain sleep, had to make adjustments throughout the night, had to balance rest with readiness. Modern sleep occurs in conditions designed to be optimal. Perfect temperature, perfect mattress, perfect darkness, perfect silence. You're trying to eliminate all challenges, all factors that might disturb sleep. And for some people this works beautifully. Their nervous systems relax into the safety and comfort. Sleep deepens, quality improves. But for others, particularly those with more vigilant nervous systems, the lack of challenges can paradoxically create problems. Because their sleep systems expect to have work to do. They expect to need to monitor temperature, adjust position, process sounds, assess threats. When there's nothing to monitor, nothing to assess, the system sometimes becomes hypervigilant, looking for problems that must exist even if they're not obvious. This is why some people sleep better with slight imperfections in their sleep environment. A bit of background noise, a room that's slightly cool rather than perfectly temperature controlled, a mattress that's good but not luxurious, their sleep systems having just enough work to do to remain engaged and functional without being overwhelmed. This isn't masochism. It's an ancient system that functions best when it has appropriate levels of challenge. Too much challenge overwhelms it, prevents sleep entirely. But too little challenge can create a paradoxical vigilance, the system scanning for threats that should be there, that always were there but somehow aren't registering. Let's talk about caffeine and other substances, because your ancestors had none of these, and their introduction into modern life has created another layer of mismatch with ancestral sleep patterns. Your ancestors' sleep-wake cycles were driven by natural factors: light and darkness, physical activity and rest, social rhythms and group patterns, natural exhaustion at the end of each day. There were no substances to artificially maintain alertness when the body wanted to sleep, or to induce sleep when the body wanted to wake. Caffeine changes this. It blocks adenosine, a neurochemical that builds up during waking hours and promotes sleep pressure. With caffeine, you can push through natural sleep signals, maintain alertness despite accumulating sleep need. This seems useful, and it often is, but it also allows you to override your natural sleep-wake rhythms in ways that create problems. Your body still accumulates sleep debt even when caffeine masks the symptoms. You still need the restoration that only sleep provides. Caffeine doesn't eliminate these needs, it just hides them temporarily. And then when the caffeine wears off, the sleep debt hits harder. But by then, you might have consumed more caffeine, pushed through again, accumulated more debt. This creates a cycle. Caffeine to stay awake during the day, sleep aids or alcohol to facilitate sleep at night, more caffeine the next day to cope with the insufficient sleep, more sleep aids that night. Your natural sleep-wake rhythms getting overridden repeatedly, your body struggling to maintain balance while you chemically push it in various directions. Your ancestors never faced this. They were tired when their bodies were genuinely exhausted, alert when they were genuinely rested. The signals were clear, unmediated by substances. They slept when they needed to sleep, not when substances allowed them to sleep. Their sleep-wake cycles remained synchronized with their actual physiological needs. Now, let's talk about something that combines several of these factors: the impact of shift work, of sleeping during the day, and being awake at night. Because this creates perhaps the most extreme mismatch between ancestral sleep patterns and modern demands. Humans are diurnal. We evolved to be active during daylight and sleep during darkness. This isn't cultural or learned, it's biological, genetic, fundamental to human physiology. Your circadian rhythms are synchronized to light-dark cycles. Your melatonin releases in response to darkness. Your cortisol rises with sunlight. Your entire endocrine system, your temperature regulation, your immune function, all of it follows daily rhythms that assume activity during day and sleep during night. Shift work forces you to fight all of this. To try to sleep when your body wants to be awake, to try to be alert when your body wants to sleep, and while you can adapt somewhat, while you can train yourself to function on night schedules, you can never completely override the biological programming. Night shift workers, even those who've been doing it for years, tend to sleep fewer total hours than day workers. Their sleep is lighter, less restorative, more fragmented. They experience more health problems, more cognitive issues, more mood difficulties, not because they're weak or doing something wrong, but because they're fighting against millions of years of evolution that says humans sleep at night. Your ancestors never had to do this. They might occasionally stay awake through the night when threats demanded it, but this was temporary crisis mode. They'd sleep more deeply the next night to recover. The idea of permanently inverting your sleep-wake cycle, of making nighttime your active period and daytime your sleep period, this would have been incomprehensible to them, and their bodies, like yours, would have rebelled against the attempt. If you're a shift worker, this doesn't mean you can't function. Many people adapt as well as possible, but it does mean you're working against your biology rather than with it. Your sleep problems aren't personal failures. They're the inevitable result of trying to use a sleep system designed for one pattern while living according to a different pattern. So here you are, trying to sleep in the modern world with a sleep system designed for ancestral conditions, trying to follow modern sleep advice using ancient sleep machinery, trying to maintain consistent schedules with a system evolved for flexibility, trying to sleep alone when your system expects company, trying to sleep in perfect conditions when your system expects challenges, trying to sleep at times determined by work rather than exhaustion, trying to sleep despite chronic stress your system isn't equipped to handle. No wonder sleep is sometimes difficult. No wonder you lie awake at 3 a.m. wondering what's wrong with you. No wonder the advice that works for some people fails for others. No wonder sleep feels elusive despite your best efforts. But here's what's important to understand. Your sleep system isn't broken, it's just old. Very, very old. Designed for a world that no longer exists, running on assumptions that are no longer valid, following protocols that made perfect sense for 300,000 years but sometimes misfire in modern contexts. This understanding doesn't fix everything. It doesn't magically make sleep easy. But perhaps it reduces the self-judgment, the sense that you're failing at something that should be simple. Perhaps it allows you to work with your sleep system rather than fighting it. Perhaps it helps you see that difficulty sleeping isn't always about doing something wrong. Sometimes it's about having an ancient system trying to function in a new context it was never designed for. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds you that you're not alone in this struggle. Everyone with a human brain, everyone with human genetics, everyone descended from those ancestors who slept without homes or safety, we're all carrying the same ancient sleep patterns. We're all trying to make them work in modern life. We're all negotiating the same mismatch between evolutionary heritage and contemporary demands. Some people's nervous systems are more flexible, more adaptable to modern conditions. They sleep easily despite the mismatch. Others have more sensitive systems, more vigilant programming, more difficulty overriding the ancient protocols. This isn't better or worse, it's variation, the same variation that helped ancestral groups survive by ensuring some people slept deeply while others maintained vigilance. You're still here, still awake, or maybe drifting now, your body finally deciding conditions are safe enough to release into sleep. And whether sleep comes easily tonight or remains elusive a bit longer, you're experiencing something profoundly human. The ancient struggle to rest without safety, to sleep without certainty, to surrender consciousness in a world that your deepest biology still remembers as dangerous. Your ancestors did this every night for 300,000 years. Despite harder conditions, despite real dangers, despite the absence of everything you take for granted. They slept. Somehow they slept. And so will you. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not easily, maybe not according to some ideal standard, but eventually, inevitably, sleep will come. Because it has to. Because your body demands it. Because the ancient rhythms that carried your ancestors through countless dangerous nights are still carrying you, still functioning, still doing their best to provide the rest you need despite conditions they weren't designed for. Trust them, just a little. Just enough to stop fighting quite so hard. Just enough to let the ancient patterns do their work. The night is long, but dawn always comes, and until then your sleep system, ancient and imperfect as it is, will keep trying to give you what you need. Rest now, or don't. Either is okay. Your ancestors survived both restful nights and restless ones, and so will you. We've travelled a long way together through this night, from the African savanna 200,000 years ago to your modern bedroom. From sleeping on the ground surrounded by predators to sleeping in enclosed, protected spaces with locks on the doors. From vigilance that never rested to safety that's almost guaranteed. And yet sleep remains challenging. Not always, not for everyone, but for many of you listening tonight. Despite all the improvements in safety and comfort, despite knowing everything we now know about sleep, despite having every advantage your ancestors lacked, sleep can still be elusive, frustrating, exhausting in its own right. So let's talk about what to do with this knowledge. How to actually use the understanding of ancestral sleep patterns to improve your relationship with modern sleep. Not fix everything, not make sleep perfect, but perhaps make peace with the ancient system you're carrying. Perhaps learn to work with it rather than against it. First, let's address the most important shift in perspective. Your sleep difficulties, if you have them, they're not personal failings. They're not evidence of weakness or dysfunction. They're mismatches between ancient programming and modern conditions, and understanding this difference changes everything. When you lie awake at 3 a.m., instead of thinking, "What's wrong with me? Why can't I sleep like normal people?" you can think, "My sleep system is running threat assessments designed for dangerous conditions. It's doing what it evolved to do. The environment has changed, but the system hasn't." This isn't just semantic reframing. It's a fundamental shift from self-blame to self-understanding, from fighting your sleep system to acknowledging what it's trying to do. And this shift, subtle as it sounds, can reduce the anxiety about sleep that often makes sleep problems worse. Because here's what happens when you believe something is wrong with you. You add stress to the situation. You create urgency around sleep. You feel pressure to fix yourself, to sleep correctly, to meet some standard you're currently failing to achieve. And all of this stress, all of this pressure, it activates your threat response systems. Makes your nervous system more alert, more vigilant, less willing to surrender to sleep. But when you understand that your sleep system is ancient and sometimes misreads modern situations, when you know that difficulty sleeping isn't about personal failure but about evolutionary mismatch, the pressure reduces. You're not broken, you're just human, carrying human sleep patterns, doing the best you can with ancient equipment in a modern world. This understanding allows for patience, for accepting that some nights will be harder than others, for recognizing that variation in sleep quality is normal, expected, part of how human sleep works. Your ancestors never expected perfect sleep every night. They took what they got and dealt with it. And perhaps you can too. Now let's talk about some practical approaches. Ways to work with your ancestral sleep system rather than against it. If you're someone who sleeps better with some background noise, honor that. Your sleep system evolved to use auditory information for threat assessment. Complete silence might trigger vigilance rather than relaxation. White noise, nature sounds, gentle music, whatever provides the background auditory landscape your system needs, use it without some shame. You're not being difficult or oversensitive. You're meeting your sleep system's needs. If you sleep better with a small light, use one. Your sleep system might be one that feels safer with some visual information, some ability to see the space you're in. This doesn't make you childish or fearful. It makes you someone whose vigilance system needs certain cues to relax. Different people have different thresholds. Honor yours. If you sleep better with someone else nearby, acknowledge this need. You're not weak or dependent. You're responding to millions of years of evolution that says humans sleep better in groups. If circumstances allow, sleep near others. If they don't, maybe a pet serves a similar function, providing presence without the complications of human companionship. Your nervous system detecting another heartbeat, another source of warmth and breathing, and relaxing slightly in response. If you find yourself waking in the middle of the night, instead of fighting to immediately return to sleep, consider what your ancestors might have done. They'd lie quietly, perhaps tend the fire, perhaps simply rest with eyes open for a while. They wouldn't stress about being awake because there was no concept of uninterrupted sleep as optimal. You might try this. Wake at 3 a.m, notice you're awake, but don't immediately try to force sleep. Just rest, lie there. Let your mind wander. Some researchers call this rest rather than sleep, and it has value. Your body is still resting even if you're not fully asleep. Your nervous system is still recovering even if you're conscious. And often, after 20 or 30 or 60 minutes of this relaxed wakefulness, sleep returns naturally. The key is not fighting the wakefulness, not creating anxiety about being awake. Your ancestors were awake sometimes during the night. It was normal. They survived. They functioned the next day. You can too. The worry about not sleeping, that's often worse than the actual sleep loss. If you're someone whose sleep system resists rigid schedules, you might need to accept more flexibility than standard sleep hygiene recommends. Yes, consistency helps many people. But if your particular nervous system is more responsive to internal cues than external schedules, forcing rigid timing might create stress that undermines sleep quality. Perhaps you sleep when you're genuinely tired rather than when the clock says you should. Perhaps you allow variation in wake times when circumstances permit. Perhaps you honor your chronotype, your natural preference for early or late sleep. Even if it doesn't align with social expectations, you're not being undisciplined. You're working with your biology rather than against it. This doesn't mean abandoning all structure. Most of modern life requires some schedule adherence. But perhaps within the constraints you must meet, you allow what flexibility you can. You prioritize sleep quality over sleep timing when choices exist. You recognize that your sleep system might need more adaptation time than other systems do, and you plan accordingly. If you're someone whose sleep is affected by stress, you might need to address the stress rather than just the sleep, because your sleep system is responding appropriately to the threat levels your nervous system perceives. If those threat levels are chronically elevated due to stress, no amount of sleep hygiene will fully resolve the sleep difficulties. This might mean stress management practices, meditation, exercise, therapy, whatever helps regulate your nervous system. Not because stress is your fault or you should just relax, but because chronic stress creates physiological conditions that interfere with sleep, and reducing those conditions allows your sleep system to function more as it's designed to. Your ancestors rarely needed stress management practices because their stress was acute rather than chronic. But you do need them because modern stress is different. It's not weakness to need help managing something your biology wasn't designed to handle. It's wisdom. It's recognizing mismatch and addressing it as best you can. If artificial light is affecting your sleep, you might need to be more intentional about your light exposure. Not just avoiding screens before bed, though that helps, but seeking bright light exposure during the day, dimming lights in the evening, creating a gradual transition toward darkness that mimics natural light cycles. Your circadian rhythm is trying to synchronize with light-dark cycles. When those cycles are erratic or artificial, your sleep-wake timing becomes disrupted. But you can partially restore natural patterns by being deliberate about light exposure. Morning light helps anchor your rhythm. Evening darkness allows melatonin to rise naturally. You're not eliminating artificial light entirely, that's probably impossible in modern life, but you're reducing the mismatch between the light exposure your system evolved for and the light exposure you're actually getting. If you're a shift worker or someone whose schedule requires sleeping during the day, you face the hardest challenge. Because you're fighting against fundamental biology, the best you can do is minimize other mismatches. Make your daytime sleeping environment as dark as possible. Use white noise to mask daytime sounds. Keep your sleep schedule as consistent as possible, even on days off. Manage your light exposure carefully, treating your wake time as if it's morning even if it's actually evening. This won't eliminate all difficulties. You're still asking your biology to do something it wasn't designed for. But reducing other sources of mismatch helps. Every factor you can align with ancestral patterns, even while the sleep timing itself is misaligned, that helps somewhat. Now let's talk about something broader, something about the meaning of all this, because understanding ancestral sleep isn't just about troubleshooting modern sleep problems, it's about understanding something fundamental about being human. Sleep reveals vulnerability. Every night you surrender consciousness, surrender awareness, surrender the ability to protect yourself. You trust that you're safe enough to take this risk. You trust that you'll wake up again, that the surrender is temporary, that nothing will harm you while you're unconscious. For your ancestors, this trust was hard-won and never complete. They slept, but they slept cautiously, maintaining vigilance even during rest. They trusted their group, their fire, their sentinel behaviors, but they never trusted completely. The vulnerability of sleep was always acknowledged, always respected, always managed as best they could. And you still carry this wariness, this awareness that sleep is vulnerability. Your difficulty letting go into sleep, your light sleeping, your frequent waking, these might all be expressions of the ancient understanding that unconsciousness is risky, that surrendering awareness requires trust you're not sure you have. But here's what's remarkable. Despite this vulnerability, despite the wariness, despite everything that makes sleep risky, your ancestors slept. Every single night, for 300,000 years, they found a way to surrender to the vulnerability, to trust enough even when trust was dangerous, to rest despite the absence of safety. This is a profound act of courage when you think about it. Not dramatic courage, not heroic courage, but the quiet courage of continuing to be vulnerable night after night despite knowing the risks. They couldn't not sleep any more than you can, but they could have developed such fear of sleep's vulnerability that they barely slept at all. Some individuals probably did, probably suffered from what we'd now call severe insomnia, probably struggled through exhausted days because their vigilance systems couldn't relax, even slightly. But most humans found a middle way. Cautious sleep, fragmented sleep, light sleep, but still sleep. They managed the vulnerability without being paralyzed by it. They took the risk because the need was unavoidable and the alternative was worse. You're doing the same thing. Every night you sleep or try to sleep, you're taking the same risk. Trusting that surrender is safe or safe enough. Trusting that consciousness will return. Trusting that the vulnerability won't be exploited while you're unaware. The fact that your bedroom is objectively safe doesn't make this trust automatic, because trust isn't rational, it's emotional, embodied, carried in nervous systems that remember ancestral dangers even when conscious minds know those dangers are gone. You're not being irrational when sleep feels risky despite safety. You're being human, carrying human memories, feeling human vulnerabilities, and perhaps understanding this, really understanding that sleep is, and always has been, an act of trust. Perhaps that helps you be more patient with yourself, more gentle with your struggles, more accepting of the difficulty. Because the difficulty isn't just about sleep, it's about vulnerability, about trust, about having the courage to surrender awareness night after night despite the ancient knowledge that surrender once meant risk. Let's talk about what we can learn from ancestral sleep patterns that might benefit modern life beyond just troubleshooting sleep problems. Your ancestors slept flexibly, some nights more, some nights less, daytime naps when needed, sleep varying with activity levels, with environmental conditions, with social rhythms. They didn't have a rigid concept of optimal sleep that they failed to meet when circumstances prevented it. Perhaps we can learn from this flexibility. Perhaps we can be less rigid about what counts as good sleep. Perhaps we can honour variation rather than pathologizing it. Perhaps we can recognize that some flexibility in sleep patterns is natural, human, maybe even beneficial in its own way. Your ancestors also respected the social nature of sleep. They slept together, took turns maintaining vigilance, shared the burden of staying safe through the night. Sleep was a group activity, a shared vulnerability, a collective effort. Modern life emphasizes individual sleep. Separate rooms, separate beds sometimes, certainly separate homes. But perhaps there's value in recovering some of the social dimension. Not necessarily sleeping in groups, that's not practical for most people. But perhaps maintaining awareness that sleep is something we all struggle with together. That vulnerability is shared. That the difficulty you're having, countless others are having simultaneously. Right now, as you're lying there are millions of other people awake when they'd prefer to be asleep. In your city, in your country, around the world, all of them carrying the same ancient sleep patterns. All of them struggling with the same mismatches between evolution and modernity. You're part of this enormous collective experience. Connected through shared vulnerability, shared difficulty, shared humanity. There's something comforting about this if you let yourself feel it. You're not alone in this struggle. You're not uniquely broken or failing. You're one of millions trying to sleep with Pleistocene brains in modern bedrooms. And all of those millions, they'll eventually sleep. Some more easily than others, but all eventually. Because sleep is unavoidable. The body demands it. The brain requires it. Evolution has made sure we cannot indefinitely resist. And perhaps there's even value in the difficulty itself, in the struggle to sleep. Not because suffering is noble or pain builds character, but because the difficulty keeps you connected to your ancestors, to everyone who came before you, to the fundamental human experience of vulnerability and trust and the courage to surrender despite uncertainty. Easy sleep might be more comfortable, but difficult sleep connects you to something deeper. Something older, something that makes you part of an unbroken chain, stretching back through countless generations, all of whom struggled with the same vulnerability, all of whom found ways to rest despite dangers you no longer face. Your ancestors bought your safety with 300,000 years of cautious nights. They maintained vigilance so relentlessly, survived so many dangerous nights, that eventually their descendants, eventually you, could sleep in homes with locks on the doors, could sleep without fires that need constant tending, could sleep without predators circling the camp. They gave you this gift, this safety, this luxury of protected sleep. And yes, your sleep system hasn't caught up yet. Yes, you still carry their wariness, their vigilance, their light sleeping and frequent waking. But you also carry their courage, their persistence, their ability to rest despite everything. And on your hardest nights, when sleep seems impossible, when the vigilance system won't relax, when every small sound triggers alertness, Perhaps you can remember that this is the system that kept your genetic line alive, that every ancestor you have made it through difficult nights like this, that you come from an unbroken line of people who figured out how to sleep enough to survive until morning, even when morning seemed impossibly far away. You have their resilience, their adaptability, their courage. It's not just their sleep difficulties you inherited, it's also their capacity to endure those difficulties and continue functioning, to wake exhausted and still face the day, to carry sleep debt and still survive, to be tired and still live. They did this for 300,000 years. You can do it for one more night, and then another, until eventually the nights become easier, or you become stronger, or both. As you're lying there now, as we near the end of our journey together through the evolutionary history of sleep, perhaps you can feel something shifting. Not a dramatic change, not suddenly becoming sleepy if you weren't before, but a subtle softening, a release of some of the fight against wakefulness, a willingness to let your body do what it knows how to do without your conscious mind trying to control it. Your sleep system is ancient, but it's also wise. It's kept humans alive for longer than you can imagine. It knows how to sleep even in difficult conditions. It knows how to balance rest and vigilance. It knows how to cycle through stages, how to wake when needed and return to sleep when possible. It knows all of this instinctively, automatically, without requiring your conscious direction. The problem is often that your conscious mind interferes, tries to force sleep to happen on your schedule, according to your standards, meeting your expectations. Your conscious mind creating pressure, creating stress, creating the very conditions that prevent the ancient sleep system from doing its work. So perhaps tonight you can step back, let go of the effort, stop trying to make sleep happen, and simply allow it. Allow your body to run through its ancient protocols, allow the cycles to unfold, allow the vulnerability, allow the trust, allow the surrender that sleep requires. This doesn't mean sleep will come immediately, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the vigilance system needs more time, more checking, more assurance of safety before it relaxes. That's okay, that's normal, that's the system working as designed. But by stopping the fight, by releasing the pressure, by allowing rather than forcing, you create better conditions for sleep when your body is ready. You remove one obstacle, the obstacle of your own stress about sleeping. The other obstacles remain, the evolutionary mismatches and modern complications, but at least you're not adding to them. And while you wait for sleep, while you lie there in the darkness of your safe modern room, perhaps you can appreciate something. The stillness, the quiet, the absences of actual threats. The fact that you can lie here vulnerable, undefended, and nothing will harm you. This is a gift, a luxury, something your ancestors could never fully experience. They survived so you could have this. They maintained vigilance so you could rest. They faced real dangers so you could lie in safety. Their courage across countless dangerous nights accumulated into your peaceful bedroom. And yes, your nervous system doesn't fully believe in this peace. Yes, it maintains protocols designed for dangers that no longer exist. But perhaps you can feel grateful anyway. Grateful for the safety your ancestors earned for you. Grateful for the vigilance they maintained so relentlessly that their descendants could eventually sleep without needing to maintain it themselves. Your difficulty sleeping in a strange way is a connection to them. A reminder that you carry their experiences, their adaptations, their survival mechanisms. Every time your vigilance system activates unnecessarily, every time you wake at 3 a.m. for no clear reason, every time sleep seems just out of reach, you're feeling echoes of the nights they survived. And they did survive. Every single one of them. Enough to have children who survived. Enough to create the unbroken genetic line that eventually produced you. Not one of your ancestors, across millions of years of evolution, failed to sleep enough to survive and reproduce. Not one. You come from sleepers, from people who figured it out, who found ways to rest in the most difficult circumstances imaginable, who balanced vulnerability and vigilance, who trusted enough and stayed alert enough, who slept. And so will you. Maybe not tonight, maybe not perfectly, but eventually, because you have to, because sleep is not optional, because your body will eventually override your conscious concerns and your vigilant system's caution and take the rest it needs. The ancient rhythms are patient. They've been running for 300,000 years. They can wait another few hours for you to stop fighting them. They can cycle through their patterns whether you sleep deeply or lightly, whether you wake frequently or rest continuously. They'll keep cycling, keep trying, keep pulling you toward the rest you need. Your only job is to allow them, to stop interfering, to trust that the system knows what it's doing even when it doesn't feel like it. To surrender to the ancient wisdom carried in your cells, in your genes, in your nervous system. Go now. Let the vigilance soften, the trust deepen, let the vulnerability be okay. Let sleep come when it's ready, in its own time, following its own ancient patterns. You're safe. Your ancestors made sure of that. They bought your safety with their vigilance, their courage, their persistence through countless dangerous nights. You can rest now. The long, dangerous night of human evolution is over. The predators are gone. The fire still burns, but it's metaphorical now, cultural rather than literal. The group is scattered across the modern world, but you're connected still through shared humanity, shared struggles, shared vulnerabilities. And in your individual bedroom, in your individual bed, with your individual struggles to sleep, you're still part of that ancient group. Still one of the humans trying to rest before dawn, still carrying the patterns that kept everyone alive, still worthy of patience, of understanding, of gentleness toward your own difficulty. Sleep will come, it always does, for every human who has ever lived. Sleep comes eventually, inevitably, necessarily. The body demands it, the brain requires it. Evolution has made sure, so rest now. Or try to rest, or simply lie there peacefully, without judgment, without pressure, without the fight. Let your breathing slow, let your muscles soften, let your mind drift where it wants to drift. The ancient cycles will carry you. They've been carrying humans for hundreds of thousands of years. They know the way. They've found it countless times before. They'll find it again tonight, for you, in their own time. Trust them. Just a little, just enough. The night is long, but dawn always comes. And until then, you can rest in the knowledge that you're not alone, not failing, not broken. You're just human, beautifully, complexly, anciently human, carrying sleep patterns older than civilization, older than language, older than anything you'd recognize as modern human life. And those patterns, difficult as they sometimes are, they've served humans well enough to survive, well enough to thrive, well enough to eventually create the world where you can lie in safety, struggling with sleep that's challenging not because of actual danger, but because of mismatch between ancient systems and modern conditions. Your ancestors would understand. They struggled too. Different struggles, harder circumstances, real dangers rather than perceived ones. But they struggled, and they survived, and they passed their resilience to you along with their vigilance. Sleep well, fellow human, fellow carrier of ancient sleep patterns, fellow survivor of the long night. The story of human sleep is older than you can imagine, and you're part of it, part of the continuation, the ongoing adaptation, the endless attempt to balance rest and vigilance, vulnerability and safety, the need for sleep and the wariness that makes sleep difficult. You're doing fine, better than fine. You're here, you're alive, you're continuing the line, carrying forward the patterns that made survival possible for 300,000 years. Rest now, in whatever way rest comes to you tonight, deep or light, continuous or fragmented, easy or difficult. All of it is okay, all of it is human, all of it is the ancient inheritance of sleep. Good night.